we are live. So we have a few dozen attendees who are
Wow, we
here. So
do.
thanks everyone for joining. We're just going to jump right into things, as I know it's lunchtime for about two-thirds of us. From roughly central to the East Coast, and maybe breakfast for those on the West Coast. So want to be mindful of everyone's time, but really excited to kick this off. As I mentioned, as you all inevitably saw when you register, this is the first one that we're doing of Matt's Chats. I couldn't think of a more egotistical name, so we'll leave it at that, and certainly open to y'all putting some stuff in the comments and chat box if you could think of a better name. But in any event, really excited to be here. Really excited to have three of my friends and partners: Scott Chamberlain, the Senior Director of Sales and Marketing at J Group, a really great 3PL; Kyle Bertin, the co-founder and CEO of Two Boxes, fantastic returns processing technology and software that he will share more about. And then Jennifer Hernandez, the Director of Operations at BK Beauty, a brand in the beauty and health space. I guess just beauty sufficient. Brand in the beauty space. So really excited for these three to kick this off with me. And really, the goal for the next, let's call it 40, 45 minutes is, we really don't have a whole lot of formality here. Really just want to bring together experts like the three of them. The goal for each of these, what will at least initially be a monthly webinar, is to bring one 3PL or one person from a 3PL, i.e. Scott today, one representative from a brand, so Jennifer from BK Beauty, and then one representative from a logistics software technology company. So today obviously we have Two Boxes represented, and the goal is really just to chat about maybe something that's topical. This morning we all saw the latest news with tariffs. I know we're all probably pretty fatigued about talking about tariffs, so we'll see if there's something more interesting to talk about. And then certainly want to dig into each of the businesses and something that is have a conversation on where the three or four of us can sort of intersect. So with that said, maybe we'll just spend the first few minutes doing some quick company and speaker intros, and then we can dig into some of the questions or conversation. The other thing I would say is you should all have access to the chat functionality kind of on the bottom of your Zoom screen there. So feel free to pop in any questions that you have, and I've budgeted about 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions that do come up. But with that said, maybe we'll start with Scott, and then Kyle, and then Jennifer with some intros on you and your businesses.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Really appreciate it. Excited to be on the debut here of Matt's Chats. I actually like the name Matt's Chats. I think it's got a nice ring to it. So let's take a vote on that at the end. I'm Scott. I've been with the J Group here about 6 years, 7 years, Senior Director of Sales and Marketing, celebrating our 60th year at J Group. Big celebration for us. So you'll see some more information and news coming out about that. Also celebrating Employee Appreciation Week here at J Group. So big shout out to the team. They make my life and job so much easier when you got a great team behind you. It makes selling 3PL services and capabilities much easier. So great shout out to them. But family owned, 60 years, third generation, based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with facilities here, Reno, Nevada, FDA registered, categories of business primarily that we focus on: personal hygiene, health and wellness, beauty, some apparel, strategic relationships within the apparel space, medical device, your toiletries type, diapers, toilet papers, things of that nature. Really enjoy my job. My background has been primarily in wholesale distribution, fulfillment, logistics. Spent 10 years with a national distributor to travel centers, convenience store industry. So still maintain a little bit of an ear into the whole retail side of things, which maybe we'll dive into a little bit today as it relates to tariffs. But enjoy my job. I get to speak with entrepreneurs every day, either launching brands or have launched brands that I kind of live vicariously through them, is what I like to say, because I don't have the gusto to go out on my own and create something. So I get to enjoy all that excitement and energy that they bring to the conversations around, their brands and their verticals that they play in. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Scott. Kyle?
Yeah, thanks. Scott and Jennifer, good to see you. Matt, thanks for having us. Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Kyle Bertin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of T-Boxes. We like to say at T-Boxes that we help brands and retailers make returns an asset instead of a liability. And so at the end of the day, I like to start by saying what we don't do. We're not a consumer-facing returns management, company like a Loop or an Arvar or Happy Returns. We actually integrate with those companies and partner with them in a variety of ways. And we're also not a warehouse management system. We don't replace, Scott's WMS in his facilities. We really help to, or like to say that we really address kind of like this messy middle between returns showing up at a facility to items being dispositioned effectively. And so that's really our whole world. So we help 3PLs run, we think, much more efficient, intelligent, and profitable operations. And then on the flip side, we also help a lot of brands make their return inventory more productive, understand trends in their returns, and then really importantly, a big part of what we do today is help brands defend themselves against fraud and abuse. That's a big part of what we do. So today we serve about 35 3PLs and about 300 merchants in 5 countries. We have a team that's fully remote in pretty much every time zone in the US. And honestly, it's just been a lot of fun because I get to show up every day and work with awesome operators who do a really difficult job every day. And we get to support a lot of brands to make their businesses more profitable in a really difficult environment. So that's a little bit about the company. About me, I'm based in Denver, Colorado. Started my career in management consulting, dare I say. And I ended up in logistics kind of by accident, and I fell in love. So T-Boxes is my first returns foray. I spent a lot of time in transportation and freight forwarding before, so it's been just really fun to nerd out on all things returns over the last 3 years. So thanks again, Matt, and I'll hand it off to Jennifer.
Thanks, gentlemen, and echoing the sentiment, very excited to be here for Matt's first chat. And I mean, you got to stick with the name. It's pretty fantastic. I'm Jennifer Hernandez. I'm the Director of Operations for BK Beauty. We are a makeup tool company in Austin, specializing in the softest makeup brushes. We were an internet viral brand in 2023 as early adopters of TikTok Shop. And so we've grown very rapidly. We were founded in 2019 by pro makeup artist Lisa J, who has been on YouTube for over 10 years. She creates incredible content educating people on makeup application. And she just valued that, tools really make the application process better. So she created her own, and here we are. So I own the full spectrum of supply chain, from planning and forecasting all the way through delivery to the customer. So this year in particular has been especially fun. As we've already said the T word a few times, so I know that we'll get into that here shortly. Yeah, it's been challenging for sure. I will say that makeup brushes by far, and this team, working with this team has been just such a joy. I joined the team last February, where I was actually introduced to Matt as we took a little dabble in considering going with a 3PL, which is where our Scott and I's paths crossed as well. But we do in-house fulfillment. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit more in this call too. Predominantly with a bunch of moms that come in and they fulfill orders very quickly, accurately. It's a pretty beautiful thing we have going here in our little tiny office to make magic happen. Prior to this, I worked for a 3PL, a boutique 3PL, for about a year. And then before that, I was with Kendra Scott for 6 years at our distribution center, which is just on the other side of our major freeway here in Austin. And then spent a little over 15 years at Target. So retail has been in my blood for a long time. Like Kyle mentioned, I didn't necessarily expect to end up in logistics, but fell into it and love it. It's the masochist in all of us. Here we are, just solving problems every day.
Appreciate it, Jennifer. So clearly we have three superstars here. Full disclosure, I am an advisor to 2Boxes. I'm a believer in disclosing when I have financial interests or relationships. So just sending that out there. I think most of you probably know who I am, which is why you're here, although I know the other 3 companies on the call also promoted this. But for those who do not know me or what we do at Third Person, really quickly, we've built a AI-powered platform that helps e-commerce brands, or brands in general, but typically brands that are rooted in e-commerce, direct to consumer. We help them discover and connect or engage with qualified 3PLs. So what we built is not a directory. We don't have thousands and thousands of 3PLs and allowing users or brands to choose their own adventure. We've created a set of several dozen rules and logic in our algorithm that helps brands really discover a curated and qualified 3PL partner. It's a completely free experience for brands to use, and the way that we make money is through a referral or an affiliate fee from 3PL. So for the brands on the call, many of them I do recognize, feel free to check it out. And thank you to Scott and the team at J Group, who are a really great partner at Third Person. And I also notice a bunch of 3PLs on the call as well, who are also, partners of ours. So with that said, thanks everyone for the intros. I had kind of slated to, talk about, a recent headline or something that is maybe a little bit more topical before we dig into, the specific businesses. So, I'm trust that most of us have probably seen, the latest headlines, that probably hit the wires, 3 or 4 years or hours ago. I think it started with Trump tweeting on, or I guess, issuing a truth. Is that what it's called? The verb of Truth Social. I'm not on Truth Social, but I do see what Trump says. And he announced, I believe, to the extent of that they've made a deal with China, and that tariffs will be about 55%. So we don't need to get into the exact details of that. I haven't seen an official statement or a press release yet. Again, I just saw what Trump had posted on Truth Social. But I think without getting bogged down on the specifics of this morning, maybe we can kind of start with how tariffs and just kind of the realities, the macro realities of the last few months have impacted all of our businesses. Jennifer, I believe that you all produce at least a subset of your products over in China, so tariffs are presumably meaningful. Scott and the team at J Group, you obviously work with a lot of brands. A lot of your clients have exposure to China, so that's obviously impacted their businesses. Kyle, I'm curious how your business has been impacted or benefited from the impact of inventory being more expensive, and what how that can sort of translate to potentially the importance of processing returns in a more timely manner. Obviously, something that is a huge value to 2Box's customers. So those are kind of how I think about tariffs for your businesses. But I don't know who wants to kind of start and take it, but we'd love to just discuss how this has been impacting each of your businesses.
I'm happy to start because I think from the brand side, it's probably the most immediate impact. And for us, it's been pretty gnarly because brushes were in January, I paid nothing. We were completely tariff free. So this is all very, very, very new to us. February being really the first time that we were assessed anything at all. And so at the first 10% level, not a big deal. We'll be okay. But then as things escalated up to 145%, this has been this year has really been a crash course for me in international trade, something that I never expected to know as much as at this point I know about. And I'm grateful for my network for putting up with my constant insane text messages trying to understand the Truth Social posts or things that I'm reading on LinkedIn or whatever, because it is, as you mentioned, at this point we are sort of hearing news and having to sit with it for a second because you don't really know what to make of it. To Matt's point, hearing a number of 55% doesn't really sound very positive in this moment. So we'll see what the official announcement comes to be, and then make a plan from there. But for us, we had a lot in production when that initial 145% came out in April. And we had to hold a lot of that back to determine what our next steps were. And thankfully, we do have great supplier relationships, and we were able to take those steps and make thoughtful plans. Using third person's amazing service, we found a bonded warehouse that we can enter a relationship with to help us mitigate some of the tariff responsibility that we have moving forward, to see kind of what happens moving forward. I think we had this glimmer of hope a couple weeks ago that maybe these are illegal. Who knows? And maybe this will play out that's what happens, but I think none of us are holding our breath. Obviously understanding that it's unlikely that we will at least see a resolution in a timely fashion. It will likely be months before we know really how this shakes out. So at this time, it's a bit of a hurry up and wait. I'm grateful that we were in an inventory position to be able to hold out and wait to see what happens, because many brands were not so lucky. Many folks are having to make really difficult decisions that are either raising prices that are met with a lot of negativity in the consumer market. A lot of folks have become, tariff experts behind their keyboards and clearly have no idea how tariffs work or how they affect brands. I shared at the top of the call that I worked for Target for 15 years, and I've never been so grateful to Walmart for speaking up and mentioning how, even they wouldn't be able to stomach 145% tariff rate. So if these things stick, they will have a rippling effect in the market. It's not immediate, but it will happen. And so I'm really hopeful that things will come down. But this morning's news is doesn't feel super settling just yet. Scott, I don't know what your
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, from a standpoint of the voice of the brands that we're speaking to on a daily basis, it seems like it's pretty shared sentiments. I mean, they're evaluating everything, right? I think the consistent message is that tariffs are here to stay. What the uncertainty that brands are faced with is what percentage, right? Where does it land, particularly as it relates to China? Certainly, with the way politics work and stuff too. I think tariffs will be here. So it's like, hey, how do we where do they land? How do we navigate this going forward? I think it's an opportunity for brands to pause too, right? And just kind of look at their value proposition to their product. Are they continuing to serve their consumers the way they had intended by solving a problem? Are they looking at SKU rationalization? Are they optimizing their SKU assortment? Is this an opportunity to cut some of that back? So we talked through all of that. They're obviously looking at all other costs associated with doing business. So not just the importing of the products themselves, but once it's here, right? Everything in between it delivering to the end consumer. So I think they're evaluating everything, is what we're typically seeing and having conversations about. But I think tariffs are here to stay. I think, I reached out to my network, anticipation of this call and talking with some brands and some retailers. It's, the uncertainty is the biggest thing for all of them, but from a retailer's perspective and from a brand perspective, some of them, to Jennifer's point, they were in a good inventory position to where they could hold, but some decided not to bring more in. And now there's an out of stock scenario that they're faced with. Some went the other direction and brought more inventory in that they could. Now there's an overstock, situation that they may have run into. So the balancing act there and the simulations and the planning and the what ifs are going through all of their heads, at least as in the companies that I'm talking to or the brands that I'm speaking with. So it's not an easy go, but I think it's making us all better and smarter, certainly, but in a much quicker time frame.
Scott, are your brands asking you, your clients or maybe prospective clients, are they asking much about, I know Jennifer mentioned bonded facilities, and that was,
Yeah.
a really, really hot topic, a couple months ago, but, let's just, hypothesize and say that the go forward tariff rate from China will roughly be, 55%. That is meaningful for brands to pay up front if they do not use, a free trade zone offshore or, a bonded facility here in the United States. So, I don't want to sound like Captain Obvious, but if it does stay at 55, I would anticipate bonded facilities being a really popular way to kind of feed a non-bonded facility in the United States. So curious, if you've heard anything like that, or if J Group has a perspective on that.
Yeah, it's settled down. Certainly, I would say about a month or two ago, we received quite a few inquiries from both brands that we were working with and non-brands that we were working with, just exploring, hey, is J Group bonded? We don't currently have bonded facilities. I think if as things settle, maybe it's something that we explore, but I think it's more of a hub and spoke scenario that ends up developing in the industry where, those bonded facilities are feeding, your traditional 3PLs and fulfillment facilities. That ends up, that ends up being the course that the industry goes, I think. But it's been a request. It's died down. I haven't heard anything for weeks.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Kyle, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I'm just kind of surprised that it has died down. Do you think it's died down because people have found solutions, or because the buzz is down?
I think some of it's just a waiting game too, right? I think it's an inventory position. Some of the brands that we're working with, I think, are in stronger inventory positions too. So there isn't the immediate need for it.
Do you think it'll go back up after the pause is over? Because I'm not gonna lie, like I definitely thought like, oh, maybe I need to like go ahead and bring it in and not put it into bond. Just, but we went ahead and kept it headed to bond just in hopes that again things will go even further down. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's
that's fine.
I think it's the unknown. I think, as the tariffs settle down, brands understand what their throughput is and what, how long they're going to sit on it or bring it in and transfer or where it's going. I think it becomes a case by case scenario for each brand. There's the conversation too around passing these costs through to the end consumer. So how much of that can the consumer absorb, right? That is something a lot of the brands that we're talking to are doing, though. There is a lot of A/B testing going on. So if it's not something you're doing today, I think that is something I'm hearing a lot from brands, that they are testing their consumer base to understand, is there more margin here that we can get or pass through? Is it, with first time subscribers even, or on that secondary purchase, I think if you're not doing that today, that'd be one tip that I'm hearing from other brands that they're seeing some success with.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just add, and I think Matt, you had a different question for me, but I'll just add, I don't know that I'm right here, could be very wrong, but I think a lot of this also depends on the size of the brand. I'd say like in like the 20 to 100 million revenue range, I think brands are responding very differently to this than if you're like a 500 million, $1 billion, $5 billion brand or retailer. I think it's just sort of like different challenges, opportunities, scope. But I tend to agree with like Scott. I think there were sort of like two cohorts of brands we saw in the period between like December and April. It like sort of two cohorts within like the 10 to $100 million range. It was either people who were like, I'm doing everything 321 de minimis right now. I got to get the heck out of Mexico. I need to find a 3PL in the US like absolutely right now. And then we saw a lot of other people who were just kind of like, well, we're just going to sit and wait. And so I think it also ends up being like end risk tolerance of the brand and cash position of the brand, and expertise level of the operators, right? I mean, lots of different folks that we work with where you got people who've been running supply chains for 20 years versus I started with the brand as the fifth person and I did graphic design and now somehow I'm running supply chain. And it's like, you just have different I think it's just such different people and experiences. It's hard to generalize across all of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, Kyle, maybe we'll use that to kind of segue into how your customer base, or really how you think about how 2Boxes can help maybe brands save some of that margin.
yeah, I mean, the thing I'd say a lot, if unfortunately, well, maybe I'll let a little secret out. I don't love posting on LinkedIn, but I find that it's very helpful for a company. And so I know I post a lot on LinkedIn. And so people who follow me on LinkedIn probably will see that I say like things about like, we're making returns on asset instead of liability. And what I really mean there is like, from a brand perspective, 5 years ago, when I first started looking into this company with my co-founder, Evan, you talk to brands and they would tell you with a straight face that they basically didn't care about returned inventory. Like, it's fine. It's a cost of doing business. It's like, it is what it is. We can buy inventory cheap. We can get it into the country with no duties. We can finance it and, for basically 0% interest. And it's not a big deal. And now kind of like all those things are very, very different. Like, there's real capital costs, there's real interest rates, there's real costs to transport things across geographical lines. There's transportation costs and warehousing costs, fulfillment costs. They keep going up into the right. Like, the costs aren't going down. And so I think a lot of these brands are like, well, it's actually not at a cost center anymore. It's actually my inventory, right? Like, just to give you a hypothetical, example, there's a company that we work with that does about $500 million in revenue. They have a 25% return rate. So $125 million of revenue comes back. And, on a cost basis, sure, that, significantly less than $125 million in COGS, but like, that's real inventory. And if that inventory goes into the corner of a fulfillment center and doesn't get processed effectively and, doesn't end up back to stock quickly, well, you got to replace it. And that's just like a super challenging cash position for a lot of brands to be in, especially in a lot of the verticals that, Scott's company operates in. Right. And so what we've seen is, not to get into like the super detailed math, I'm happy to after the call with anybody, but like an average brand, we find that if you're in a high return rate category, there's somewhere in the range of 1% of your revenue that you're likely lighting on fire every year if you're not actually optimizing your returned inventory. And so, let's go back to our hypothetical company that does $500 million a year. If they have a 1%, 1% loss rate on that, that's $5 million. Good brands in this space, like publicly traded brands, make 12%, 15% net income margins. So let's say you're a 15% net income margin, you're doing 75 million in cash, and somebody can pull $5 million out of thin air for you just by optimizing your returns. Like, it's a significant amount of money. And so that's what we see a lot of brands are starting to take a hard look at, right? It's like, well, how can I make a little more money in this environment without, changing my prices, right? A lot of brands are going to have pricing power. They're going to change prices. But I think a lot of brands are starting to look around right now and they're like, well, I've already squeezed a ton of money out of my 3PL, like for pick pack. And like, I'm not going to move for a 10% savings, but like, can I start charging people for returns? Can I start optimizing my inventory in that process by working with great suppliers using great technology? And also, a big area that we're helping a lot of brands right now is, can I refund the customer actually after I've actually received the item and confirmed its quality? That's one of the biggest things that we do in 2Boxes that a lot of our brands really benefit from is, hey, maybe don't charge Matt for $10 for a return, but say, hey, in this environment, you're going to wait an extra few days for me to actually inspect the item and confirm its quality before I issue you a refund. Because 3 years ago, 87% of the brands that we worked with were refunding before they received the item, right? And they can't do that anymore. And so I think a lot of this comes down to, hey, brands they have entire teams devoted to improving, conversion rate from their website by, a percentage point. But they don't have teams looking at 30% of their revenue that might be being returned in a given year. And I think that's changing really quickly, and we're helping lead that charge.
Yeah, it's great. To that last point, Kyle, I know your co-founder Evan has a series called, is it Shit People Return?
It is shit people
Crap people.
return, yeah. And
Yep.
it's literal shit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This isn't a family channel, so we can say that, and it's my webinar, so we can say that. Um, but yeah, you should definitely follow that, because it is. I mean, it is in some ways surprising, in other ways unsurprising. Like a bag of rocks, like not the expression, but like a literal bag of rocks someone returned, or I don't know, maybe there was Takova's boots or some boot company where, you know, the customer returned a pair of boots that looks like boots that I had in my closet here that are like completely worn out, and exchange them as like a brand new pair of boots. So the amount of fraud that unfortunately a subset of consumers commit is really obscene, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, just to give an example, right? So we talked about, kind of a conservative case, right? Like Tecovas, we actually just released, funny enough, a case study with them today, outlining some of the achievements that they've been able to drive with two boxes. And roughly
On
speaking, I
LinkedIn.
think Tecovas is in line. Yeah, it's on LinkedIn. So, anyways, we've got Tecovas is a great example. They're definitely in line with industry norm, where I would say vast majority of brands have 10 to 15% of their returns that are at least abusive of the return policy, if not like clear fraud. And so, Tecovas is definitely in that cohort, and we actually worked with them. This was their idea, not ours. So I'm really thankful to them. We actually worked with them to develop a feature where if Matt returns a pair of boots that he's worn, down on Broadway way too many times and tries to get his refund, we actually create in two boxes a shipping label to ship it back to Matt. And they automate a whole host of outbound messaging back to Matt that says like, "Hey, thanks, Matt, for being a Tecovas customer. We're returning your boots because they didn't fit or they didn't follow the policy. And we can't issue your refund, and here's your boots back." So, I think a lot of brands are going after that. And just, think about this, right? Like, let's say you're a company that has, again, 500 million in revenue, 25% return rate, that's 125 million. And if 10% of your customers are abusing the policy and shouldn't get a refund, well, you're refunding over $10 million a year and paying for all your logistics costs on top of that and your cost of goods. I mean, it's an insane amount of money that's getting lit on fire, and I think people are just starting to say enough's enough. So my prediction on all this is, in the next 5 years, free returns are going to, largely speaking, go away, except for the best customers, and that brands are going to start using a lot more data powered by companies like Two Boxes and others to create more dynamic and fair kind of return policies based on the performance of the underlying cohort of customers.
I think too, like as a partner of Two Boxes, so full disclosure, J Group uses Two Boxes in our facilities. I think visibility is like the one of, if not the number one, reason brands and 3PLs are choosing Two Boxes. And I think it's also what answers everything that you just touched on, right? From a brand's perspective, returns end up becoming like a back burner, whatever, their analogy you want to use there, where it's kind of, forget about it. And it just sits in a 3PL's warehouse, not because the 3PL wants it here. It's because we just have no direction as to what the disposition should be on it. But I think, and Jennifer, maybe this is where you can come in, from a brand's perspective, without that visibility, you're kind of just taking our word that we're saying, oh yeah, this is quality product. In our eyes, maybe it's quality, but in the brand's perspective, maybe it doesn't rise to that level of, a sellable good. So I think without the visibility that Two Boxes now provides, making that decision was a lot harder for brands. So therefore it just sat there, forget about it. Right. And there was no action taken until, maybe the 3PL pushes and says, this has been here for 6 months. We're going to increase, storage to long-term or whatever it looks like. From the 3PL's perspective, the visibility to us is amazing, right? We actually know what's coming back to us in advance now, as opposed to, kind of it being a surprise every day as to what's coming back. So that integration point too made visibility for us much, much stronger. I think the other visibility too, going back to that quality, is like in real time, effectively, brands can see what we're processing pictures and images of it, right? And actually now not only communicate back to their consumer, but communicate back to their manufacturers, their suppliers, material suppliers, and so forth, and actually troubleshoot in real time effectively, instead of waiting for trends to develop. Hey, the quality of this product looks like we need to address this, right? Or how do we improve this packaging so that these things aren't coming back? Because I can see, the last 50 orders that J Group processed from a returns perspective, the packaging's damaged, but the product is fine, right? So there's a lot of real-time takeaways there that I think Two Boxes provides that we just didn't have from an industry standpoint prior to that.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Scott. One other thing I just want to add there is like, there's a whole host of stories I could tell. We've seen so many things at this point, and we've helped a lot of brands save a lot of money, and 3PLs too. But I think another thing too that's really important, especially in returns, is every brand is a little bit different. They all sell different products. They all sell different, they all want different processes, right? Like I tell this story a lot. The simplest return SOP I've ever seen for a brand to their 3PL is 2 sentences. It was, if you would buy this, please return it to stock. If you would not, please throw it away. And it's like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? And then the most complicated one is for a cookware brand that we serve right now. It's 165 pages with like photos and detailed instructions for all the different variants and rules, and it's crazy, right? It's like, well, how do you expect one of Scott's team members in a facility in PA
Right.
or Reno to like do that, right? And so what we've been able to do, and what I think like I'm very bullish on like the future of warehouse software in general, is like we got to make it easy for humans. And we got to make it easy for brands and 3PLs to collaborate instead of like this, Spider-Man meme that we see happen all the time of like, well, the brand's mad at Scott and Scott's mad at the brand because they're like, well, you didn't tell me to do it this way. And it's like, well, no, I did. And it's like, well, I don't have any data to show that you're doing it this way. And like, we've helped a lot of 3PLs and brands, I think, just build better relationships around like, we're putting the rules in a work software flow that's easy for a human to understand. You're seeing the data come through. You're seeing the results. You're seeing the photos. You can fine tune it over time, and everybody can really win, right? Like Scott can make money doing the job, and the brand can get more inventory back to Scott.
Well, we talk about too internally, right? There's the 3PL industry. There's many of us. Matt, right? Third person can contest on how many are on that platform, but there's this big kind of trend around technology and automation and sexy tech and things like that. I think how we refer to it internally is meaningful technology. And you think that, Two Boxes is an example of that. It's meaningful automation, right? I mean, it's not automation. It's not technology for the sake of being technology and sexy and just putting it in, but there's true meaning behind it, and to both the 3PL and the brands themselves. Jennifer, I feel like you may have some comments there too on the product side, so I don't want to dominate the conversation here, but would be open to your perspective on that too.
Yeah, sorry, Jennifer, before you get to it, I want to wrap in maybe before the 50-minute mark, so I want to save the last 5 minutes for questions. So I know Rob, you asked Kyle a question. We'll address that in a few minutes, but if anyone else has a question, pop it in the chat. I'm not sure if other attendees can see what other people chat, maybe. Again, I'm a newbie here, but we can certainly see that. So pop it in the chat and we can get those questions at the end. But yeah, Jennifer, curious of your perspectives there, particularly given that you do the fulfillment yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been on, like when Scott was talking about the 3PL side of your brand leaving their returns in your facility. I was having a little PTSD there as well from my 3PL experience. It's challenging, and I also I will say that I am I'm intrigued by Two Boxes, but I am not a Two Boxes customer yet. It's not relevant for us at this time because we are one of those smaller brands where returns isn't necessarily a huge problem for us at this time. But I do see a lot of value. We certainly, and Kyle, you were fresh in new baby land, so I don't know if you remember this conversation, but we met at Manifest and we were talking a little bit returns fraud, and from TikTok we actually see it's really good today. But at that time, we were seeing a huge increase in return fraud coming from TikTok because of the way that they automate returns. And so your product, again, at that time was I feel like just incredibly innovative and huge for these brands that do have, like Takova's, that have super expensive product, and people are just ripping them off left and right. Having done customer facing returns for so many years, I've seen firsthand, like in my face, what people will try to return to you. So it's only gotten significantly worse as folks don't have to interact with you face to face. So just thank you for what you're doing for both the brands and for 3PLs like folks in Scott's position. I think it's awesome. But from
Thanks.
our brand side, returns are actually the least of our problems. I feel like, and I think since we're coming up on time, we may not want to talk get into fulfillment too much, but you let me know, Matt, if we want to talk fulfillment at all to wrap out the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's take a couple minutes and do that. Yeah, we have a couple questions we can get to at the end here.
So we as I mentioned at one point in the call, we kept our fulfillment in-house. We did go through third person services, and I've been on a couple conversations like this, and I feel like I need to clear things up that, like, I'm not against 3PLs. I love 3PLs. I've used 3PLs before. As I mentioned, I've been a 3PL. It just, you have to do what makes sense for your business. And as we went through the RFP process, we just determined that fulfillment needed to stay in-house for us from a brand perspective. We were concerned that we wouldn't be able to keep up with the volume, but we absolutely can. It makes sense for us from a cost perspective. We're able to, we ship makeup brushes, which are tiny. Like we're lucky in that regard that we were able to keep a lot of our operational costs very low, keeping it in-house. But so yeah, we have it really easy. But if you're a brand that doesn't want to do fulfillment because you don't want the headaches, like it's not the easiest job. 3PLs are fantastic partners. They often can unlock price decreases, whether that's shipping or just not having to deal with the headaches of scheduling people, or what are the other things that give you headaches, Scott? There's a lot of them. 3PLs can be really great
What
partners.
doesn't?
Yeah, just for us, it made sense to keep it in-house. We're lucky to have just such a wonderful team that is excited to continue to grow and scale with us. And as we continue to grow and identify new challenges, we find ways to overcome those roadblocks. And again, I'm just really lucky to have the people here make the biggest difference, for sure. If we didn't have the people that were invested into our customer experience and each other, then I don't think we would have it as easy as we do. But we do. People.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's maybe take a couple minutes with questions. We have a couple of them here. I'm going to start with looks like Albertus has asked us a question. What meaningful tech do your teams love? Low or no code tools that are easy to use that I could experiment with at my 3PL? So I don't know. I guess anyone, maybe Scott or Jennifer.
Are they coming from a 3PL, or are they a brand looking to integrate with their 3PL?
That's a good question. I read it as Albertus works at 3PL. Okay.
What you got for him?
I mean, I'll start. I mean, so from a warehouse manager, WMS, we run Manhattan Associates, which actually, when 2 Boxes was able to integrate, is when we pulled the trigger there. So, so we may be a little bit more unique in the industry compared to some others. So a lot of our tech stack related to how it integrates with our WMS is, I would say, homegrown. From a technology standpoint, or equipment type standpoint, Rufus stands out. Rufus has been a great partner for us. 2 Boxes obviously is part of that from a return standpoint, tech stack side. I would say anything in that personalized, unboxing experience, print on demand. There's on digital, there's Yuzu, there's others out there. They have a pretty strong tech stack that it makes it pretty easy to integrate with 3PLs and provide that level of value to your, your brands. What else stands out? A lot of more of our analytics on the back end is more homegrown. Phoenix Commerce from a TMS standpoint might be one to explore. There are your industry standards that I've heard good things about, your pipes and all that kind of stuff, 17 and so forth. So maybe that's where I'll leave my answer.
Yeah.
Matt, friends of
Jennifer, go ahead.
Hoping 3PLs. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of probable use cases for 3PLs, but I'm sure that there are some.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many. I mean, obviously with AI, there's a lot of really great tools out there that aren't necessarily logistics specific or 3PL specific, but could have applications for 3PLs. Scott mentioned a bunch of tools that are more kind of customer facing at a 3PL. Yuzu, is a good example too, where, they'll do like print on demand, custom note cards for, in boxes and, different marketing initiatives like that. Parabola is another good example, more of a sort of BI tool or, analytics tool or, tool to help everyday users make sense of, complicated, workbooks. Yeah, anything else that might come to mind? Kyle, or Jennifer?
I mean, honestly, I was gonna bring up Parabola as well. I agree with Jennifer. I don't see as many 3PLs using it, and I don't know if that's just like a yet thing. It's definitely, there's a lot of brand traction with that company. I mean, I don't know if like Albertus is looking more in the spirit of like just kind of like automating some things that he doesn't need like true SaaS for. On that vein, I'll just like say, I think there's a lot of things changing real fast. There's a lot of cool tech out there. Like I use ChatGPT hourly. I use Gemini a lot. Our engineering team is playing around with everything under the sun. We've been able to like do some stuff that frankly I didn't think was possible a year ago, and it's now becoming very, very possible. So I would just encourage people like the only way you're going to learn in the age of AI that we're entering into, and I think it's a little bit overhyped, but I think there's going to be a lot of real things too. I think in the age of AI, like the only way you learn is like being out on the field. So like if you're not experimenting with, ChatGPT, or there's a cool tool, pretty cool tool called Replit that you can build like basically production apps in. I say like just go play around with stuff and learn. You don't learn by just reading, you learn by doing. So that would be my suggestion.
Totally. I heard some quote the other day from Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google for about a decade and then became their executive chairman. Most are probably familiar with Eric Schmidt, but he said, AI is not going to take your job, but those who use AI will. And I thought that was really powerful. I mean, it sort of echoes what Kyle said, right? Don't be scared of it. If you're not using even something as simple as ChatGPT or Perplexity like Claude on a daily basis, if not hourly basis, you're probably wasting some time. Good. Well, just really quickly, maybe I'll let Rob and Kyle maybe take that offline. But Rob was asking a question around, he sells a dietary supplement, so I was asking about kind of returns use cases there. So Kyle posted something back, which is only visible to the panelists, but he's happy to talk to you, Rob, about that. They work with dozens of supplement and cosmetic companies. So if you guys aren't connected, I'll connect the two of you. But yeah, we're pretty much at time. So I want to be sensitive to that. Thanks everyone for joining us. I believe we're doing this the second Wednesday of every month. So the next one is July 9th, also at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific. So you'll see, updates, on LinkedIn when we get a little bit closer to the date with signups. But appreciate everyone for joining today. Appreciate you, Scott and Kyle and Jennifer, for being the inaugural guests. And please send me a message with any feedback. This was the first, so we probably made some boo-boos along the way, but appreciate everyone for taking some time out this morning to join us, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks everybody.
Cheers.